January 29th, 2013. Episode 6, Part 1, Hypocrisy and Hope. Welcome. Hopefully welcome back. If you're fed up with liberals, corruption, dirty politicians, bankers, Ponzi schemes, and Big Brother invading your privacy, well, you're always welcome here. Make sure to drop by our website at mad-yet.blogspot.com. There you'll find simple and easy links to our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and our podcast. Now, let's see what I have to say in my new article. As in my previous articles, my goal is to spotlight what I consider problems within American society today. In this article, the word problem is synonymous with hypocrisy. Let me point out just a few examples first off. 1. How about Mayor Bloomberg dodging questions about his retention of firearms, and the harassing of the reporter who asked the question? Not to mention the exempting of government officials from carrying firearms. It's okay for them to have weapons, just not you. Does this sound remotely fair to you? 2. Why is it that you need an ID and a background check to buy a gun, but not to vote? Can someone please explain that to me? Imagine if we had background checks for voters at voting time. I'd be fairly certain Obama wouldn't have won the last election, specifically because it's inconceivable that he won 99% of the vote in 100 Ohio counties. Election fraud is a long-standing American tradition at this point, and if you think it isn't, you're living in a fairy tale, friend. 3. If assault weapons are so bad, why is the government, specifically DHS, buying 7,000 of them for personal defense? This is suspicious as hell, because of the dozens of reports of DHS stockpiling tons of hollow point ammo over the last year. And that's just the ammunition we know about. Imagine the ammunition we don't know about. Now, ask yourself, why does a domestic law enforcement agency need that much ammo? 4. Are you aware that rich Americans are leaving tax-heavy states for less tax-heavy states? Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods are only recent examples. There are even reports of Tina Turner finalizing her Swiss citizenship. I assume your imagination can do the rest as it pertains to why she did such a thing. The rich are leaving areas. Some are even leaving the country due to increased tax burden, and it's time that you think about doing the same. 5. Can you explain to me how liberals can put together a gun control bill in just a few days, but they haven't come up with a budget in over 4 years? Is this what you call effective? Why do we put up with this hypocrisy? If you weren't aware, America was founded by people leaving oppressive despotism, burdensome taxes, and the lack of freedom to worship as they saw fit. They grew tired of tyrants telling them what they could say and who they could say it to. The shot heard around the world was a pivotal moment for mankind as a whole. Common men and women had stood up to tyranny in the past, but this was one of the first moments when citizens openly knew it was their obligation to defend against oppressive governments. Senator Dianne Feinstein talked about gun rights in her speech last week. But if you paid particular attention to the speech, you noticed something strange, something microscopic, something sinister. These silver-tongued devils, called liberals, use words to obfuscate their true intentions. If you listen to her speech, you will notice she used the term legal gun rights. This simple, short, and seemingly innocent word went almost unnoticed, but it was intentional. Now I have a question for you. What are illegal gun rights? How is it that this sinister, liberal, and evil witch can assume the right to tell you what your rights are? She goes around making speeches, telling you about what her goals are, and how everyone needs gun control. Never once does she explain how she retains the ability to tell you what your rights are. She never once explains how she can assert the right to take those rights from you to anyone within the sound of her voice. Here's a secret she doesn't want you to know. She can't. She doesn't have that power because you didn't grant it to her. She somehow assumes she has this power. And I have a little quote from my Marine Corps drill instructor that has stuck with me since boot camp. Assumptions are the mother of all F-ups. Your rights are on a piece of paper called the Bill of Rights. Furthermore, the Bill of Rights is only a piece of paper. It acts as a reminder to what we all retain innately from a higher, some would call it a divine power. You can call that power whatever you want. Hell, go pray to Big Bird or Oscar the Grouch if you want. It makes no difference. The fact remains, no person, state, or government can take those rights away. You need to understand that you have natural rights. These rights preempt legal rights, as Thomas Paine explained very clearly in his book The Rights of Man in the late 1700s. The Second Amendment was written very clearly. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. She is ignoring this on purpose, which is a slap in the face to the principles this nation was founded on. It is treason, period, and the first senator or congressman that has one of these liberals arrested on these grounds would be heralded as a national hero in my humble opinion. Can you say fast track to the White House? More government control. As I have clearly defined in my past articles, government is about control and nothing more. Government is a beast, and this beast's only goal is to control you and everything around you. Whatever they can't control, they ban. Restrictions on light bulbs and cigarettes are just the beginning. Bans on soda drinks, internet gambling, raw milk, and even feeding the homeless are more proof of this. Your own government, seemingly, consciously, is aware of its own mortality and has enacted safeguards to make sure that it survives so it can continue to control you, no matter what. This safeguard is called the continuity of government plan. Richard Clarke clearly discusses this as far back as 2000 in a YouTube video that I have attached to my article. This is not conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact. We are stuck with government or order in some form, no matter what. If the world fell apart tomorrow, we would have families that would lead communities, and communities that would lead cities, and so on and so on. The internet is full of people declaring that we need to end government. Ending government will solve nothing. I do not subscribe to the typical anarchist theology. It is flawed, and human nature proves that. Anarchy is what we as a culture should try to avoid at all costs. Anarchy leads to wasted time, resources, and the loss of human life in most cases. Such an ending would be unfortunate for all parties involved. The only time I would subscribe to any anarchy would be in the pursuit of more liberty, and that would be a cost worth paying, and many nowadays agree that we have reached such a point. I must point out, our founding fathers probably would have already been on the government capitol lawns with shotguns by now. Today's society just sits and accepts this oppressive, fascist dictator's edicts, hoping someone will come and save us. No matter how gung-ho, Rambo you think you are, we as a culture are tame. Some would even say docile compared to the founders of this nation. Until someone has the military-like bearing to stand up and assert their will upon this regime currently in power, until you have shown the backbone our founders did, you can't sit there and claim how patriotic you are, and neither can I. But it does help to know who to look up to as an example, and we should all look up to the fearless men and women who founded this nation, not for who they are, but how they acted in the face of near certain demise. Then ask yourself, when is it okay to overthrow the government? And is it the right move? Is distrust of government bad? Most independents have a healthy distrust of government, and that is good. It means they won't fall for everything they are fed by the mainstream media or dishonest politicians who have lobbyists stuck to their legs like leeches, pushing corporate agendas that aren't beneficial to any of us. Citizens distrustful of government see things normal Americans don't, and such things help us retain our liberties more often than not, to the liberal agenda scathing our nation. Such vision should be applauded, but rarely is. In fact, most propaganda encourages people to think of these citizens as crazy or even unstable. Most people teach their children not to believe everything they see or hear. It's human nature to distrust things. If someone calls me paranoid, I just smile and say thanks. It brings to mind a quote from Joseph Heller. Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't after you. As stated before, distrust of government is openly mocked by the mainstream media as aberrant and sometimes even a disease. WebMD classifies this as a mental health disorder called paranoid personality disorder. They plan on using these terms and diagnoses against you to advance their agenda even further down the road to communism. Obamacare, combined with current legislation like Dianne Feinstein's draconian gun control bill, would work in tandem, joined at the hip, to restrict or outright steal your ability to own firearms. Due to this propaganda from the powers that be, most people see distrust of government as a bad thing. The communists, like Feinstein, Obama, and other prominent liberals, want to ram the glorious fiction that guns are somehow bad for America down your throat. They would claim that your guns could get up, walk over, and shoot you and your family in the head while you're sleeping if they thought you were dumb enough to fall for it. Your ability to fend off these attacks on your intelligence depends on your ability to ask questions and not trust everything you hear from these liberals using media against you. This concludes Part 1. Please check my channel for Part 2. Thanks for listening. Keep checking in, and keep sharing my material if you agree with me.